And the idea for this is super informal. A couple of months ago, Andrew and I recorded a Hangout. Andrew, Josh, and I like to talk about technology a lot, and typically it's on Skype, unrecorded. And we have the idea that sometimes we'll just do it in public, and if people want to hop in and also talk while we have a drink or two, that's encouraged. And then if people are really bored, they can watch it later on. So I think the big news since the last time Andrew and I recorded a Hangout for us personally was that now the Skype friends all work together, which is kind of fun.
Also a little terrifying, actually.
A little terrifying. A little
I mean, for everyone else. For us, it's cool.
Totally for everybody else. I've been hearing a lot of scuttle this week, you guys. Everyone's freaking out.
Freaking out?
I'm freaking out in a good way. I run the Seattle Cloud Foundry meetup group. What? I'm good. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great time to be here.
Totally.
James and I have been talking about doing something together since he started heckling when I was pitching OpenStack in 2009. So it's been a long time coming.
That's true. I went and saw Josh's first OpenStack talk before it was called OpenStack, when it was just called Josh Hates Eucalyptus.
That was a great talk, by the way.
And so when all this OpenStack stuff went down, I was like, I know the guy that hates eucalyptus behind this stuff.
Haters unite.
And then I met Andrew. How did I meet Andrew? It was a conference?
It was actually the first announcement of OpenStack at OSCON. We were all up there running around. I was outscaling at the time, and we'd exchanged pleasantries on Twitter before that, but that was the first time we wandered around a city till late at night.
We fully met, and then the other pivotal person on here is Sandeep, who is pretty heavy in the mobile space, who I met when we gave him a lot of money to force him to hang out with us. So he's not as organic of a friend, I'd say, but he's just as awesome. He's here, Sandeep from.
I'm as intense, though. I'm just as intense.
We had to pay Sonny a lot of money to hang out with us. I'm like, well, I guess everyone here gets paid, but you know what I mean, like. So, Andrew, you and I talked when I was up in Minnesota, and you were thinking about joining then. Maybe you've been doing the road show. What are you seeing on the road show? What's it like to go from outsider to insider, and any observations for folks?
Well, it's always eye-opening to be inside the sausage factory, right? And the roadshow's been kind of a crash course. I had to learn a bit of the technology to be able to go out there, although I'm still learning even more. But then just seeing the exuberance of the people that are trying to get onto this, and even the way the roadshow is put together, it's Cloud Foundry is sort of this thing that's there, but it's actually more about the technology and more about the transformation and more about what's possible. So people come to that and they leave with a whole new understanding of what they're going to be able to do, whether they use a platform like ours or they want to go build one themselves. Like, they know what they're up against. Like, you're either going to be able to do this or you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And it's kind of I don't know. Based on the tweets and the emails that have been coming back from that, I'm pretty happy with the way it's working, and feels like it's a bit of validation in the market and internally also to see that work.
So that word microservices keeps coming up in the roadshow. Like, are big companies really ready for that?
That is a loaded question. The future is not evenly distributed, James.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, Josh, you were kind of an item last week. People, I thought it was some great write-ups about you, man. I mean, I knew that when I first saw you talk about Cloud in '09, but
yeah, that was
feel to go through that.
That was overwhelming, to be honest. I was sort of hoping we would bury it a little bit under Oracle Open Worlds, and people were like, "Oh yeah, this thing happened. Doesn't really matter," and I'd have a little toast. We had cigars and port the one night, and that would be it. And no, it kept coming. I ended up doing interviews every day last week, so that was I guess it's really perfect timing. I actually got an amazing amount of email from existing OpenStack users who are like, "Hey, we want to follow you up the stack." how do we get involved with Pivotal? We've been using OpenStack for a couple of years, and we realized we're ready for the next step here. You know, what we are getting out of IaaS is something that allows us to run PaaS, but we realize what we really need is platform. And it's kind of this transformation that Schaefer was talking about. You know, everyone sort of gets excited, and we feel like the market is moving so fast because we're on the front edge. But actually, things move at a very steady pace. And the folks that did OpenStack 2 years ago, now they're ready for Cloud Foundry. So that was really cool, just seeing how many folks are like, hey, bring us with you.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're better at being aggressive about this concept that private cloud really is about platform. It's not just about VMs on demand.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, if we just wanted VMs on demand, right, we would have just used VMware, right? That's what they do. So, no, the idea of it being API-driven and really being a solid, agile infrastructure, I mean, I sort of covered it in the blog post a bit, right? But making it something that software can deal with the same way that humans deal with it, it takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. I think I need to get more bold about the pronouncements around, you know, one thing that's on my to-do list is, hey, private cloud's really about platform, it's about software delivery, and let's just get serious about that. I've never wanted to kind of, you know, rain on anyone else's parade, right? Like, you know, like just, you know, burn your candle brighter, don't make other people dimmer, but
I already have enemies, right? Everyone already hates me, so I'm happy to be the pointy end of the stick and be like, hey, you know, data center consolidation, that was that cute thing that you did like 10 years ago or whatever, and you got the returns out of it that you can, but that is not about winning the new war. That was a holding action against becoming totally irrelevant, but the way you're going to go win the new war is by figuring out how to speed up. This is all about going fast.
I think, you know, just to introduce Sunny, CTO Extreme Labs, and I had a great visit with Sunny to a customer who we can't name, but who's one of the top 4 sports leagues in the world, or in the United States, I guess, in LA. And the one thing that Sunny is really good at articulating is why, like, all these old heavyweight SOA services just didn't ever work for mobile. I mean, Sunny, do you want to talk a little bit about Extreme Labs, where you came from, and how you're looking at the change that's going on out there right now?
Yeah, so yeah, I think you touched on it earlier. Yeah, I joined you know, Pivotal through the acquisition of Extreme Labs. I was one of the founders, and we were focused on application development, right? So we did consulting services to help folks build applications. We started the business before the iPhone came out, and then the iPhone came out, really changed mobile development forever. One of the big things that we've seen with that transformation at, you know, consumer internet companies and enterprise companies is that the sort of the requirements from the end user are being driven, you know, from what the consumers are seeing with their consumer applications, right? So, you know, take this example, you know, Instagram obviously was acquired by Facebook. They moved the entire data center from AWS into the internal Facebook data center, but they did that without zero downtime, right? And there's this expectation now that, you know, like you can't pick up a splash page that says, hey, you know, app is down, come back later, right? Because the app gets published to an app store, it gets approved, you can't take them down easily. So there's this notion of the applications have to have, you know, continuous uptime. You have to deliver features to those things continuously, and that's where, you know, you're starting to see the differentiation. One of the things that I kind of help people look at is look at the top 100 apps in the App Store, and you ask yourself, why are they there? Well, they're there because they're always up, right? You know, what's the big difference between Instagram and WhatsApp versus all the other messengers is that they don't have any downtime, and they build things from day one to be scalable, and that's what the expectation on mobile is, right? And for me, you know, I push that agenda, which is, you know, why PaaS is crucial for mobile, and I kind of look at it from, you know, a couple of different key points. Like, one is, you know, on mobile you see this exponential increase in workload, right? And the example, and, you know, not to be long-winded here, but I want to get these out there, especially for
Sunday night hangout. We got all night.
Yeah, but you know, one, like workloads, and I look at our banking customers. So we built a lot of apps for banks, right? And one of the things that they really saw was, you know, if you look at a bank, rewind prior to the internet, you used to physically go to the bank, see a bank teller. That would be your interaction with the mainframe at the end of the day. That was one interaction with the mainframe, maybe every week or 2 weeks, right? Internet banking comes around, you start, you know, logging in a couple times a day, or a couple times a week, I should say. With our banking customers, on average now, on mobile, they see people access their bank, their checking account 37 times a day of a payroll deposit, because they're waiting for that deposit to come in, and they're basically, you know, want to make a payment or do whatever they need to do, pay off their Visa card or whatever they have to do. But the infrastructure behind that hasn't changed. So you see this huge exponential increase in workload, and you have to be able to handle those things. And, you know, but doing that without a PaaS is difficult, and that's kind of what James touched on with, you know, the sports leagues folks that we were visiting on Friday, right? Or sorry, last Wednesday, where, you know, these folks have seen this exponential increase because more and more people are adopting mobile. This sports league, one of the partners there is giving everybody video access for free this year, and so you see this huge jump in workload, and you know you need to be able to have a way to handle that. So that's one, and then two, you know, coming back on the idea of continuous delivery and continuous integration, right? You can't take these apps down, right? The expectation is that you're updating them all the time, and you're doing it seamlessly, and you're doing it, you know, and you're adding new features, and you're not taking them down for folks. You can't put up a splash page that says, "Hey, down for maintenance, come back at, you know, 6 a.m. tomorrow." So I think looking at those things, that's where, you know, PaaS really, from a mobile kind of point of view, really is, you know, critical to build, you know, high quality applications, especially for enterprises.
I mean, Sandeep, can I ask a question there? Or Schaefer may have the same question. Is, do you see microservices as being pulled into this equation simply because when you talk about having a single endpoint being hit 37 times a day, you don't really need a whole monolithic application loaded up there just to answer the one question, which is, did my payroll hit?
Yeah.
Right? All you want to know is, what's my account balance? That's the definition of the microservice, is the minimum amount of program that can answer that one.
Yeah, you know, you hit it right on the head, and so this is where, you know, and James took a page out of something I talk about. This is where there's a fine line between the soification that happened in the enterprise over the last, you know, 10 years and where we are today, right? And that, you know, banks have been really, or enterprises, not just banks, have been really trying hard to, you know, soify their backends and basically create these, you know, distinct services. The challenge is that they were trying to do it in a web world, and now it's a mobile world, right? And so we have to kind of bridge the gap again, and that's where...
I actually think that's not entirely the problem. The problem is they were sold these solutions which were supposed to be, you know, service-oriented architectures, which are actually monolithic. So that's part of the problem. And then I would take it even a step further with what you're saying about apps, because on the back end, if you get an HTTP request, you don't know if it's from a mobile app or not. And the back end of these systems is going to look pretty much the same. And yeah, mobile's this explosion, and I'm not actually a fan of Internet of Things as a label, but that is not going to slow down. It's actually going to explode exponentially, so that you're going to have even more things connected, even more things making requests, even more things dependent on infrastructure and these back ends that don't go down. So that is not going to slow down.
I mean, just look at the number of devices we're dealing with, right? I was just prepping for this call, and I've got my phone in my hand because people keep tweeting about what I say, which is weird. And then I've got my iPad on the table, and it dings every time my phone dings because they're syncing to the same Skype chat, they're syncing to the same Hangover, and I've got another laptop in the other room that's also so I'm one person, and I'm 5 devices with probably 6 or 7 apps connected to that one endpoint. So yeah, this is only going to get worse or better.
Yeah, you know, I'm doing a blog post, and it's going to come out. I have 57 devices in my house that have IP addresses today. It's really crazy, right? And you know, I may be on like an edge, but that's where we're going, right? And it's common, right? And so, you know, like the way I describe it to people, we all know it in our things, is look, in the 90s and early 2000s, people came online. Now stuff is just coming online, and that's why you have 50 things that are there, right? Everything you can imagine has an IP address on it.
I think what's interesting to me about Sonny's experience is, like, a lot of us have been talking about these trends. Like, Robert's here, he's working on some greenfield stuff. He built greenfield stuff before, but Sonny was sent in to go build mobile apps for all these big brands. They kind of had this very legacy IT approach. So it's sort of like he's had to hit his head against what is the reality of enterprise architecture today and try to take it to that next generation. That's why I always tune in carefully when he talks about, you know, giant, you know, 20 megabyte XML files when he's trying to get the woman's name just for the banking app. So it's
that's like I'll share it with everyone here, but we did a banking application. I won't name the bank, but we wanted to just show like the daily mortgage rate, and we got this mortgage feed that was coming out of some mainframe, and for every request it would return like 1.7 megs of XML, and all you needed from it was like the the mortgage rate of the day. You had like 1.7 megs of XML that was coming back for every single request.
So that's why when people are like, why are they saying microservices? I thought we had SOA. That's what people, like when Andrew does these road shows, we had the company that puts ratings on all the top stocks in the world walk away saying, hey, we want to go build some microservices for our data, because today, like getting a big XML file of every piece of data we have ever is not exactly how you can go build apps off of it. So it's interesting transition. We thought kind of putting that batch XML front on everything is not the exact same as building real live microservices.
Yep.
There's a subtlety here that we'll miss if we're not careful, which is that the difference between SOA and microservices is really subtle in a certain sense, in the same way that the difference between platform as a service and any other kind of DevOps approach of like, well, I use Docker containers and therefore I'm doing something clever. And the subtle difference is really, is it slowing you down or speeding it up? Is it enabling you to do the same thing you used to do, or is it enabling you to do net new things? And really, when you look at this, like, okay, microservices means I can deal with lots of different devices connected as the same user to the same service at the same time with no pollution of state. And we're building those and upgrading them in parallel. And it's the upgrade lifecycle, this day two piece, that I think is a story that SOA never answered.
I mean, one of the problems with the SOA is that there was all these promises, and those promises weren't realized. And it was a way to sell crappy middleware, and everything that had to do with SOA somehow became SOAP XML interfaces. And what we have now, whether you want to call it microservices or SOA, the good parts, is we just got rid of all the crap. It's not like just tossing a little JSON around and making it work.
Yeah, I really like what you said a second ago, Andrew, where you basically said, the challenge with the existing solutions that people were sold to get to the promise of SOA was monolithic software, right? And I think if we can use that as a clarification for like using that particular point as in, look, that's SOA and this is microservices and this is really the big difference. That was very articulate to me. I think we should revolve around that. I think that'll help people a lot.
Absolutely. I feel like what we're seeing here is the lessons that were learned building the big web. There's all this stuff about best practices that the enterprises adopted that when the early web companies try to do that stuff, it basically doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. If you want to build highly available systems, that stuff is just a great way to have catastrophic failures.
Yeah.
And so we moved into this, whether you want to call it DevOps or just doing your job the right way. Those things gradually got refactored to where they're a bunch of stateless services talking to each other. And then as you get to the point where this is the thing I've been saying in the roadshow as well. Everyone looks at the stuff Adrian Cockcroft from Netflix says about microservices and the Netflix story, and they're like, oh, Netflix is amazing, and they do all this stuff, and that's not necessarily wrong. But what they miss is the reason that they got to a microservice architecture is that they wanted to go faster. They wanted to go faster, and they wanted to be safer, and they also wanted to be able to do the Conway's Law inversion, where you're able to have the small teams focused on one aspect of the application and how it all comes together. So, but all these, Netflix is the one that's been trumpeting that, but all these big services are built that way. That's the way Amazon's built. That's the way Google's built. If you make a request to Amazon.com right now, you're probably going to hit at least 100 services on the back end to render your page, right? And it gives you a bunch of other operational advantages that you can have partial failures in those microservices and degrade aspects of your functionality and still have your site work.
So Schaefer, let me be mean for a second and ask the hard question here, which is that, this is what we do, by the way. I'm always mean to Andrew.
I'm never mean to you, Josh.
No, it's true. You're always nice to me.
Team of rivals.
This is the same thing we were trying to do with MTS and DCOM in the Windows world, and all the way back to CORBA, right? Like a set of discrete components that talk to each other, whether you call it RPC or you call it kind of a service bus mentality. Like decompose the app so different people can build different things, make promises over contract and interface, and then evolve the software underneath and behind the contract, right? Now, the reason it's working now and it didn't before is these subtle differences, but I really like to drill in on what exactly is it that's making it work now, where CORBA obviously catastrophically failed.
So one of the things I think, and if you never wrote IDLs and all this crap, then you might.
Oh, I did though. I did. I did this.
No, but I'm just saying that I think RPC is a busted mechanism, and when you get to the REST mentality, and you're representing state instead of trying to change state procedurally, I think that changes a bit. I also think that some of it just has to do with industry maturity. So if you look at the evolution of all these topics, right, like object-oriented programming is going to save us, right? And then basically CORBA is just trying to do this same thing but in a distributed fashion. But we all know that most people can't design object-oriented systems worth crap. So you have the same problem, except for now you just put the internet in the middle, right? You just put the network in the middle.
So here's my question though. Like, is this finally the chance where we have a pattern? We can say, okay, this is kind of the pattern that we can now form a platform around. Because that's what my passion about it is. I think there's two bets here. One is that we have an evolving pattern that really matters in a fundamental way that we can start to capture for people. Two is it's the right time to bring it to enterprises. I live a block away from Moscone Center. And I spent the last week looking at about 60,000 people from Oracle, all of them in suits. Like, the amazing thing about the Oracle conference is I don't think there's a developer there. Like, this is entirely sort of IT management only. I went to the keynote. I've had a little bourbon now, so don't let me get wound up. I went to the keynote, and there wasn't a whiff of new technology in it. It was sort of, the message was it's safe to keep buying the same thing you've been buying since 2004. So I guess the question for us, though, like, we're all putting our reputations on the line, making a big push behind this and saying, the time is now to bring this pattern to the enterprise buyer, and Oracle is wrong. I mean, do you guys believe, like I do, that Oracle's fundamentally an anachronism at this point?
James, the word that we keep coming back to is it's about going fast.
Yeah.
Right. And I hate the term fail fast, but it really applies in this case. There is no reason that magically Andrew is a better programmer than everyone else in the world. What he has is fast cycle time, which means he can learn faster by making mistakes faster and making tiny mistakes that don't cost you much. That's the whole story here, right? The platform, the reason this is so disruptive is because if you, as an enterprise software engineer, get to push code once a year, which, trust me, is very typical, and in fact, when I was doing this, it was once every 3 years.
Yeah.
So if you only push code once every 3 years, your mistakes are catastrophic. They're huge. They take companies down. You don't want to be that guy, right? So it forces you into this box where your ability to innovate is almost entirely gone. If you push code, once an hour, you can make a ton of tiny mistakes and fix them by tea time.
I think that's why Oracle's in trouble. Like, fundamentally, I would bet anything I've got that Oracle is on the wrong side of history right now because of clock speed, because of the idea that deploying every 9 months. So, Sonny, you remember we talked to that Australian bank, and they're like, hey, every 9 months we roll something out, but we want to do all these great things, and we're like, dude, that's broken. You can't be great by changing every 9 months.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about it, though, James, is like, what I've seen even through the mobile kind of push, right, which is one aspect of it, is I think what happens from a business point of view is just the total addressable market just gets larger. I don't think Oracle's, Oracle's going to stick around. They're going to their business will remain at the size. It may not grow anymore, but I don't think it's like there's going to be like a replacement. I just think that's where our positioning has to be on like net new on top of it, not as a replacement. Because I think go ahead.
$10 bet.
Yep.
Oracle joins Cloud Foundry. I'm going to give them 2 years because they're slow and stupid, but they did it to OpenStack, right? And I called that, how long did I call that ahead of time? It was in one of my annual prediction blog posts. I think I gave them 18 months.
Sonny, I've got I love the technology, and I also have goals around our financial success, and I see ELAs come across my desk now that would have been Oracle's, and only 6 months in the market or 9 months in the market are now ours. So I agree with you that there's no way Oracle as a $189 billion business is going away anytime soon. but I think that their growth potential, and it will become material to them over 2 years.
Yeah,
Really,
and I think that's why Josh's point is right. You'll see them knocking on our door asking us to write a.
They're already missing quarters.
Right.
yeah.
The thing is, I think
Robert,
this
we
does
haven't talked a lot yet. Speak up.
that this does point out a issue, which is I think for this kind of microservices and kind of modern techniques, you need to have a matching organizational structure, and I think that's the biggest realm of inertia. Is that's why Oracle still exists, right? It's just this inertia that's huge in the enterprise, and I'm glad I'm not in enterprises. So, but that to me will be the biggest resistance. Is just you're saying that they have to change their lives and their whole organization and all the empires and all that stuff. So we need to get in where people are doing something new.
That's why we have a way of filtering our prospects, and we look for innovate or die. So then the first question is, do people feel innovation pressure? If so, we'll spend a lot of our time talking with them. If they feel no pressure at all, we pretty quickly back off unless they really push on us to spend time with them. I agree with you 100%.
And like I'm fond of saying, you get the IT future you deserve.
So Andrew, it looks like
you do not have to change. You do not have to change.
It looks like Josh had to.
Go ahead.
No, it looks like Josh had to put his kids to bed for a second. But
well,
go ahead.
Actually, I want to go back because we didn't. You asked a question that we didn't address head on, which is there patterns and can you build a platform? And I think reflecting on the stuff I did basically for the last 5 years, the stuff that we saw people building, with Puppet, with Chef, up till now, like they aspire to build platforms. You basically are trying to get to the point, and the stuff that everyone can do internally, right? Like the way the deployments worked inside of any web company that I've seen that had any chops at all since mid 2000s, they could deploy to real hardware in minutes and have whatever applications they supported configured in under 10 minutes. Like I know Etsy can take bare metal machines as soon as they're powered on to be in the cluster in about 6 minutes, 5-6 minutes.
So let me just tweak this angle a little bit. There was a really interesting, people don't tend to think about platforms and security in the same breath. But J.P. Morgan was hacked, and one of the things they said was they did a kind of a slow, progressive, incursion into their systems, and they captured the blueprint and formatting, and kind of the templates, the way that everything was laid out in their systems. And then the question is, if you're an enterprise who's been kind of owned like that, how quickly can you change your config? And this is one thing that Sonny and I got, when we were able to impress that sports league. We said, yeah, you could apply live updates in, a minute, 2 minutes, with a couple of commands, versus imagine today when people have a security breach, and they even to change their configurations might take them months to go through traditional processes. So, I've got this talk I've got to give in November, and what's been in the Fed space, in the government space, to the DoD, 1,500 people. And it's been interesting to me to think about how quickly can you change your state of the system that's being attacked too, and all the new dimensions that could come out from ability to rapidly change the way you've configured yourself.
Yeah, I mean, APT is certainly a key threat in government, especially. This was one of the drivers actually for NASA Nebula when we started it, was not just efficiency and cost efficiency, but the ability to improve security by deploying platform. I think that gets underplayed a little bit because case examples are not super readable. Nobody really likes to talk about how they've failed and be like, oh, and this time we totally got owned, and this is all the compromise we have. But one of the stats that if you work in federal government, they say, look, we get hacked successfully every single day, and so forensics is not an if, it's a when.
Right.
Designing systems that you can perform forensics on are almost as critical as designing systems that people can't get into.
What's really interesting about what you just said, Josh, is that people used to think of speed and security as like orthogonal, right? Sort of the faster you were going, the less secure you were, and now they're like basically completely aligned, right? The faster you can go, the more secure you can be.
That's also become the truth about uptime, right? It used to be, oh, if you're slow and steady, you're going to deploy systems that are highly available and secure and will stay up. And now it turns out, no, it's that rapid iteration integration cycle where you build systems that can survive being broken.
It's shifting from the old mindset, which was to minimize the number of incidents, to the new methodology, which is to minimize the mean time to recover.
Right.
This bleeds into all these other things about microservices as well.
Now, Robert brought up this point about cultural change, and I'd love to just sort of dive into that a little bit more. I mean, Schaefer, you're famous for talking about Nash equilibrium, Pareto inefficient Nash equilibriums, and sort of the how do we, from a game theory standpoint, look at the culture of deploying applications and building them.
So the thing that I like to talk about, I frame it with that, but it's actually organizational learning and this model.
Yes, learning organization. But if you think about, let's take a calcified existing Oracle customer. Let's take a 100-year-old company, and what's the best path for them forward into a new world that looks like they could keep up and not become immediately irrelevant? Like, let's think of like Yellow Cab or somebody who's clearly getting disrupted today.
So the question there is, at what level are you capable of learning as an organization? At what speed are you capable of acquiring information and changing your behaviors? Because my argument is you haven't actually learned anything until you change your behavior.
Right. So how does CF play a role in that learning path? I mean, that's the interesting aspect for me, and this is why I come back to saying education. I have a sweet spot in my heart for dealing with schooling and educating my own children and the role that platforms can play in that. But I think they play this earlier role in organizational learning, where before you start thinking about reinventing your business, using a platform to carry your new business forward, you can think about using it to disrupt how you do things today.
So I think there's at least 2 layers to this, probably more, but you kind of have just the eye-opening that happens when someone sees that you can take and in minutes put hundreds of containers on an infrastructure configured to however you want with automated routing, automated log aggregation, all the health checks, all the stuff. Then you can delete. So the demo that Onsi did with the Docker on Diego that's been floating around, you delete 20% of the infrastructure, and the whole thing's recovered in 20 seconds. And you never lost any.
Diego reschedules all of the lost infrastructure starting in 3 seconds, ending in 7 seconds. That's how fast it is.
Yeah, and you lose no connections.
Yeah.
So that's just an eye-opening thing, right? Like whether they're going to use Cloud Foundry or whatever, like that's information. So how do you change your behavior? If you know that's possible, and you know you're against people that are using that, what are you going to do?
So the one comment I'll make, and I didn't see this in our own stuff in Extreme, but I've seen this through someone I'm pretty close with who worked in disaster recovery, and I'll bring that up, is a lot of times it's fear, right? And to kind of Josh's point, it's like it's fear of, you're this existing business and someone's going to pass you, and I think, it's that fine line of finding that medium between fear and education to overcome it, right? Where, what really got the disaster recovery business up and to the right was sort of 9/11, right? People are like, oh my God, I have to have 3 data centers because someone's gonna do something disastrous, right? And I think not to say we have to find our 9/11, it's terrible, but like there's got to be a it's got to be like a realization, to your point, around like, hey, if we don't do these things and we don't educate ourselves, then we're going to be in serious trouble when this X thing happens, right? I don't know what that X is, but that's where we kind of have to really nail it.
I mean, I think X is probably different for each vertical.
I'll tell you, I spent a week in Germany talking to the top 3 car manufacturers there, and one of them is going to join the Cloud Foundry Foundation after one demo that they saw. And I'll tell you, it scares the pants off them that the fastest growing car company in the world now is from Palo Alto. It makes no sense. And I asked the question of like, why is the fastest growing car company in the world not from Japan or Detroit or Germany? It's from this funky little software town. You know, like what in the world? We have no manufacturing advantages here. Like, why is that?
I mean, so, you know, one of the investors at Piston was True Ventures, and they've invested a lot in the, you know, 3D printing and MakerBot and OpenRV space. Like, just this idea that physical goods are now a software problem. They're not a logistics problem or a human problem or a manufacturing problem. Every single one of those problems, logistics and manufacturing and design, are now almost entirely software problems. So this idea that people that get better than you at software are now better than you at everything.
Well, we didn't say it out loud yet, but software is eating the world, right? That's the theme.
Yeah, but if you frame it that actually software, it's not that, it's that people that are good at software are eating your lunch.
Well, as I said in more than one presentation, you're either building a software business or you're losing to someone who is. And then just to go back to what you were saying about learning and what Robert was saying about culture, I've also argued that you're either building a learning organization or you'll be losing to someone who is.
Yeah. So Kim hasn't talked at all.
But she drank some wine.
Did you drink some wine?
I did.
I'm going to give you a chance to jump in. And I'm going to just ask you, like, are you seeing people ready for change? Do you think we're all crazy to be investing our lives in building a platform for change here to try to bring together themes like mobile and OpenStack and DevOps and cloud into one kind of coherent push? Or how are you feeling about it?
So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Accent will tell you. Was there last week, and really people get Cloud Foundry, and I was really surprised. I will tell you, I ran the big data user group down there, started it in 2011. There was no big data group there at all, right? Apache came out with Hadoop in 2009. There was nothing there. We were talking a lot, and everyone said, you know what, Cloud Foundry is really what we're following right now. OpenStack, we're following that right now. I sold, so full disclosure, I sold Oracle ERP solutions and projects, and let me tell you, when you guys were talking Oracle earlier, we were talking, hey, you know, you push code every hour, every couple hours, right? Back then, it was 9 months for a release, 18 months for a project completion. That was just V1, right? So Atlanta's getting it. Atlanta gets that it's not enterprise, it's not all the time. It's a pretty good, so that's kind of how I view it, you know, because out here it's a different world. Down there it takes a little bit. I'm not really sure that people really want to sign on for multi-year, you know, relationships. As far as answering your question, you know, there's Jesse Proudman.
Yeah, we got my whole crew showing up. We got Rodrigo Flores, who runs Cloud for Accenture. Hey, Rodrigo, we can't see you. We don't do anonymous ads.
We got him.
Not anonymous. It's just.
He's like the godfather. Look at him.
You're there. You were looking at my wall.
He's like, James, I may never ask a cloud favor of you, but someday I may.
I thought
figured it out.
So, for people who don't know Rodrigo, he is not making squeaking noises, I don't think.
Yeah, can you hear me?
A company called NewScale that he founded to Cisco, and then now is managing director at the cloud platform at Accenture. So, welcome to the party, Rodrigo. We're just having a little bourbon talking about platforms, microservices, and the fact that is it time for transformation in the enterprise, or are we crazy? What are you voting? We're crazy?
These things don't have to be mutually. They're not mutually exclusive. It's a false dichotomy.
Okay, Rodrigo's voting no way. He likes his Accenture annuity business. He doesn't want anything to change.
We're crazy. We love disruption. We charge for the old stuff, and then we charge to move you to the new stuff. So go forth. I'm
because you don't know how. Right?
Jesse, you got to put your camera on. We're not allowing anonymous stock photos from your previous modeling career at.
Is the camera's not on?
There you are.
No,
look, I'm right here. I'm in a truck.
Nice.
I'm literally tuned in from a truck.
Where are you, Proudman?
I am in West Seattle. I turn 30 tomorrow.
Yay!
I'm tuned in from a truck, and I'm celebrating my 30th birthday talking about Cloud Foundry.
Freaking-tastic. That's fantastic. That's how I celebrate every night, by the way, Jesse. Just so you know.
In a truck?
No,
Truck.
I've never had a truck.
No, that's probably the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesse didn't get properly introduced, so let's.
Yeah, introduce him, Andrew.
Well, I'll let him introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about what you do up there with your OpenStack and Cloud Foundry stuff.
What I do?
Well, who are you? Where do you work? What do you do? That kind of stuff.
Yes, so I am founder and CTO at Bluebox. We do OpenStack private cloud as a service. So every customer gets a single tenant OpenStack installation that we manage, deploy, and operate for our customers. We run Cloud Foundry on top of that for our own internal services and soon for customers themselves. That's coming in the next couple quarters. Company's been around for 11 years. I was founder and CEO for the first 10, now founder and CTO, actually working on the interesting bits instead of operating the thing.
What do you like about Cloud Foundry? You actually use it to run your business.
Yeah, so we do not have it in production yet. We have it in development and staging. We are in transition from we call it a legacy operations infrastructure where you've got the pets infrastructure. We've got good old App 1 and App 2 and App 3 of our deployments, and if you don't have access to App 1 or App 2 or App 3, you can't deploy it, and you can't test it on staging, and it's really slowing down the development cycle. And for example, there are, I think, 42 pull requests sitting in our GitHub Enterprise account awaiting deployment because we don't have a good pipeline to get them out into production today and to test it.
This is not Bank of X country. This is a startup. That even without a platform, it's hard to do this, right?
It's super hard. We're around for 11 years, right? So I think you've got legacy that is the difficult part. So we're in the midst of translating that legacy into modern application architecture, and we've got a lot of the development architecture there. We don't have the deployment architecture, so we're fixing that.
So everyone's talking about pets and cattle, and what we're trying to build is a concentrated animal feeding operation.
Wait, hold on a second. And pets and cattle, what about those people who are Chinese, right?
I couldn't hear you, so say that again.
What about those who are Chinese and for whom dogs and cats are actually cattle as well? You had an account, right?
Robert,
do you have video inside of that then, or joke about slaughterhouses?
Yeah, we tend to talk about the healthy part of the life cycle, not the scary part.
Well, that's actually you should be able to end of life your infrastructure just as easily. I'm sure there's plenty of boxes running around in enterprise data centers. No one knows what's on them. There's nothing vital. Everyone's afraid to turn it off.
So, Andrew, let's talk about something maybe we didn't do an amazing job of over the last year. Like rah rah rah. I think we're all part of an important trend right now, and we wouldn't be here. But I don't think we made it easy enough to consume a part of Cloud Foundry without consuming the whole. And I know you and I are spending a lot of time talking about this Diego project, and we just put a pair of developers on making a micro release that anyone can just download as a binary and get going with it. I think that's a sin we had, that we didn't do a good job of having a more modular unit of virality for getting started with us. And any thoughts of what we're going to do there and the impact that's going to have?
Well, so let's go backwards. So the reason, going kind of like Conway's Law style, you had a bunch of people inside of organization that is building enterprise software, and they built an enterprise software.
Yeah.
So it's not really any shock. The Cloud Foundry out of the box can be a bit unwieldy, and you kind of have to be this tall to ride the ride, and then even then, it's not the easiest thing to kind of get set up, installed, operate, what have you, out of the box. Just once you kind of map into how Bosch works and how Cloud Foundry works, there's a lot of advantages, but that initial time investment to get there is considerable.
There's a steep learning curve.
Yeah, maybe even prohibitive. So
yeah, I think as Dr. Nick likes to say, there's incredible power, but we didn't make that getting started experience easy enough. I think that also gave us an opportunity to kind of sneak up on the market because it didn't have that early viral hacker news kind of buzz. And then when you see the fully in flight, all the features, enterprises are excited about it. But
so one of the things we said, or I've said, is it doesn't really scale down. You basically have like Star Destroyer size. Like you can't really go below Star Destroyer. So if you need like any sort of small footprint to do like,
just to be clear, it's a really amazing Star Destroyer. Like IBM Bluemix is running tens of thousands of applications right now on one installation of Cloud Foundry.
But you might not, if you're not IBM and you're 5 guys or 3 guys working out of an apartment, you might not need to have all this stuff around, role-based access and orgs and all these different things that the platform gives you that are maybe important from an enterprise perspective.
But Andrew, I feel like it's important to note that those features don't necessarily require a significant actual installation footprint. The features are a function of the platform, but don't require 20,000 physical servers to run, right? Like
that's true.
Part of the code.
That's an orthogonal point to the fact that but a default installation of Cloud Foundry.
22 cores, 60 gigs. Let's just put it out there. Today, our enterprise product is 22 cores, 60 gigs. It's not tidy. It's not small.
Right. But a Blue Box Cloud offering comes with 96 cores and 386 gigs of memory. So in terms of the grand scheme of things, the footprint is a meeting footprint to give you an actual technology platform that works, but it's not a footprint that requires an Oracle installation or a massive private cloud.
No, it's a little bigger. It's a little bigger than what you need to kind of spin a thing up, throw it up there, see if customers like it, and decide if you want to double down and really build a thing. Right?
But here's the punchline: is that was great for enterprise product. That's what people want. In fact, we've had incredible success in the enterprise this year. So I know it was the right play. And all said and done, I think we're going to put up the largest ever first year for an open source project in bookings ever in the history of software. So that worked. But the thing that I have is I want to get to this 40 meg binary install of some unit of value that anyone can throw on any laptop and go show their friends something cool. So I think that's what Diego's going to be, and everybody who sees the demo wants the technology. I'd love to show it to Robert sometime and see what he thinks, because he's kind of got this unbiased outsider pragmatist perspective.
So the end of the story is we're trying to tease apart the Elastic Runtime bits, and so you're going to have the pieces to do the routing. So the Go router, the Elastic Runtime, and then the log aggregation, Loggergator, kind of as a little package unit, and then you don't have the rest of the Cloud Foundry weight. We're still a little ways away from where I think it's packaged for people to just jump on it and start using it. But I think if we get that right, then it's something that a small team, even one guy, could use to spin up, down, manage containers in a meaningful way. I think we're still a little, so we'll probably focus on Docker, using Docker as unit of deployment.
Yep.
And then you're going to have the ability to bring up whatever little cluster size you want and put arbitrary Docker images, however you made them.
So this, to be clear to folks, this will be 40 megs of Go code that will let you schedule, run, health manage, and load balance hundreds and hundreds of full servers worth of containers across them with 40 megs of Go code.
Well, that's cool. I think you guys need that because otherwise, you need to have a lot of resources to set it up, and a lot of projects start with the notion of one guy or gal somewhere decides that, let me give this a try, and then they show it to their manager and with something working, and it graduates, and so the whole point is they go from science experiment to a little thing, and enough of them do that little thing that somebody higher up says, holy mackerel, we had a lot going on here. Let's look, what's the enterprise support model, blah, blah, blah. But there's an adoption curve. There's a natural adoption curve for this stuff that always starts with some crazy person, smart person, risk taker, whatever you're going to call them, lost in the woods, way too much time, that is able to experiment. So you got to enable that, and anything that requires as many cores as it does now, requires someone, some managing director type like me to come in and
big dog, my buddy Rodrigo.
But,
yeah, exactly.
I think to your point,
Lab.
To your point, our current kind of sales path is from the other direction, right? Like it's not some frontline developer that's all of a sudden got Cloud Foundry up and running and can do a bunch of stuff with it. It requires a little bit more hand-holding until we get a smooth installation and let someone, like you said, one guy can take it, spin it up, and have something they can show. Then I think we'll be able to scale that.
I also think it's really important to open source software to be modular, because if other communities can't take a modular piece of you and reuse you in their community, you're sort of open source, but you're not pluggable. Like
absolutely,
I
James.
want to give the world a gift that this is like. So Josh, maybe you can talk a little bit about you think
Totally.
this modular.
Yeah,
Josh is alive.
Hey, Jesse. Sorry.
Put his kids to bed. That's what he
I
did.
got kids. I got one down. I got another one running around.
I have bourbon.
I got two kids in the backseat of the truck right now.
Awesome, dude. This is like video conference with children in the back. So, yeah, I mean, one of the sore points for me about OpenStack is that the scheduler that we ended up building. So Jesse Andrews and I, when we were first kicking off OpenStack, we're like, it'd be a great pattern, and this was really Jesse's brainstorm, was an auction model where all the servers sort of vote for the capacity they have and the desire they want to distribute. And this is because you have to deal with concurrency problems in how you're doing workload placement, especially if you're placing a whole lot of copies of instances at the same time and a lot of different people placing instances at the same time. So the auction model we figured would be awesome. We figured it was going to take us like a day and a half, 2 days to make a prototype, and we didn't have 2 days. So we built the chance scheduler, which was literally the first machine that answers gets the workload.
Whoops.
We shipped that with the first version of Nova. We're like, this is so bad, no one will ever use this. This is clearly the placeholder for us to build something cool. Fast forward years later.
It's still the core
scheduler. And now people glued stuff on top. It's like, well, we got filters, and we got more filters, and we'll sort of have this rules system on top of the filters. And the core of that thing was never something that made sense, right? So Diego comes along, and Diego is the auction model scheduler, exactly how we thought it out. It's actually better than what we thought, but it's sort of a similar vein. Let's just take Diego and plug it into OpenStack.
You think Unsie's smart enough to help OpenStack too? Have you ever met Unsie?
Oh yeah, I met him right before that talk, right at Platform Summit. That guy is sharp. That was
the best talk at Platform CF.
That was the best talk at like most tech conferences I've ever been to. Like ever.
Yeah, it's the best kept secret of Cloud Foundry, right? Like I'm out there talking about it a lot. We're known on Twitter, but Unsie's sitting quietly behind us all, like with a PhD in astrophysics, like scheduling.
No big deal. Astrophysics from Berkeley. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. And he's just quietly taking no fame and making the world's greatest software, resource scheduler ever, in a highly iterative, open, friendly process.
Absolutely. I'd like to see Diego just running everything else that needs scheduling and placement. Because you could probably actually take supply chain logistics and use Diego to be like, well, let's optimize the routes for trucks.
But I think you'd have to
real-world containership
to pull the scheduler part out of it, but it's possible.
A CPI that actually loads real containers on the backs of rail cars.
So we're at an hour, and this is really fun. Any last comments from folks? So we can do this again any other Sunday. The thing I like doing on Sundays is only people that really love technology would tune in, right? Like if you're not into it, you're not on this. You're not listening. It's not the Wednesday morning crowd.
Hey, James, let's close with a question that maybe we don't answer today, but everyone ruminates on, and we could start with this one next time, which is, what's the next piece? We've got the scheduler piece, we've got the health monitoring piece, we've got a lot of the core parts of the platform story. The next piece I've been thinking about a lot that I think is out in the ecosystem that we need to bring into Cloud Foundry is service discovery.
I was going to say, it's like, if you look at the trend of microservices and what's happening there, the challenging part is how do you do service discovery and authentication? Like that's.
And this is round tripping to, hey, I built something as an app, I converted it to a service, I run it as a service, I build new apps on top, and how do I layer that cycle? Because right now those two things in Cloud Foundry are very yin and yang. Apps are here, services are there. Yep. And that discovery piece, whether it's console on top of Surf or it's something that we haven't even built yet that we turn Auntie loose on. I think that's got to come next.
It's service catalog, guys. Like, look, I think
Really?
Pivotal
Holy
should have
shit!
on AWS.
For people who
Did I
don't
miss the
know,
inside joke?
Rodrigo sold the service catalog company to Cisco.
Oh, shit.
I'm going to be dining out on that for the rest of my career. It seems like every year. What's the service catalog?
Hey, Rodrigo,
The
you know what
reality
we
is
should
it's
do?
really service catalog. Like, it's awesome to have platform as a service, but if I still got to talk to my stagnant MySQL database, that does me no good. So you've got to figure out a way to package, deploy, and maintain all the associated services that don't rely on all the associated companies that live on the AWS platform, and to do that in a commercial way. Because until I can get the same set of service catalogs in my private cloud, on VMware or on OpenStack or on my public clouds on Google or Azure to the services I can get out to Amazon, I can't migrate my workloads. And I think one of the key benefits of Cloud Foundry is the ability to actually migrate those workloads amongst the providers.
Yeah, I think our HA of MySQL is this close to shipping in the enterprise product. It'll come out in 1.4 in November. We've already done a demo of that, and we've launched a Jenkins service. I hope to get you acquainted with Jesse with CloudBees, which is fully integrated. So we got a lot of push on services and big funding. And Sunny has built these mobile services, which are very popular. That's the major sports league uses that for push, for object syncs, for API gateway, etc.
So I think Josh sort of touched on this a little bit, but I think we need to rethink the whole service app separation. And there's a bunch of pressure from a bunch of different directions to not just have a service catalog, but to actually have authentication and role-based access at the app level as they connect and talk to each other. That would be really interesting to build. And then you also have like the unsolved problem in all this is like how do you actually scale out the data layer? Like, we have a really good solution to scale out the app servers, but if you're trying to auto scale and your underlying data services can't keep up with that load, you still have to solve that problem.
Well, that was the whole talk at OpenStack Silicon Valley. Was like, great, I can scale my application tier out to n plus 10,000, but if the data tier fails, that doesn't do me any good. So we've got to figure out the data tier model for this, for Cloud Foundry or any platform as a service, open source platform as a service to really be wildly successful.
Who's drinking? Are those ice cubes? Rodrigo, are you pouring a tall martini?
It's empty. So we need to.
I'm gonna do closing thoughts, Sunny. What should I be thinking about? What should I be thinking about, Sunny? Are you shaking a drink on this?
I'm now pouring it.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna do closing thoughts, Sunny. Any closing thoughts or words for wisdom for people?
Yeah, I think we, towards the end of this, we touched on a really important thing is just that 5-minute developer experience. I think we really got to get better on that. That's just
yep.
It's a sore spot for us right now, right? And if we want to get there's a lot of good energy in and around obviously the Docker ecosystem, and we've got to with where we're going with Diego, we've got to leverage that quickly. Otherwise, we could lose a lot of mind share, and that won't be good for us, right?
Rodrigo, closing thoughts. You think nothing ever is going to change? Accenture's happy to sell you the same thing for the next 5 years?
No, that's not the way that the game works. The game works by moving people from one thing to the next. That's what the money is.
You call it, Rodrigo, I love your metaphor, you call it moving the hippos over the mountain. You want to tell people your hippos over the mountain story?
Yeah, so basically you have a bunch of hippos. They're in this pond. The pond's dying, is drying out, right? And enterprise sales consist of telling the hippos there's a better pond over the hill, right? But the hippos don't want to move, right? They don't want to move, right? They just want to stay in their pond, even though the pond is dying, right? It's just not the right pond anymore. So the whole work of migration, right? There's a reason it's called migration, right? It's not called airplaning. It's not called driving. It's
airdropping,
right? It's how do we enable the hippos who have to move, but they don't want to move because hippos, don't like moving. go to the better pawn, right? And that's where the big money is. That's where the big problem is. And we don't like what, you know, in our industry we tend to complain about, yeah, well, they're a bunch of hippos. They don't get it, you know. They're not cool like the gazelles, man. The gazelles, they just got it going on, man. They're hippos, right?
I love that metaphor for enterprise software. It's a good one, Rodrigo.
Yeah. So the question is, can we make the entire Oracle suite microservice inside Cloud Foundry? Not how can we make fun of Oracle, because come on, they're an easy target.
I don't want to make fun of them. I just see we've literally taken a lot of seven-figure contracts out of Oracle migration. I think they're to this change.
That's because they were 10-figure contracts that they were too busy working on. That's what I've learned.
Maybe the case, but I think they're more vulnerable than people realize. Robert, you are no enterprise software, man. You are a startup guy. What are your closing thoughts here for all of us?
Well, so a trend that I've seen with my clients when I was consulting earlier and now with this new startup is we're starting out as SaaSes, but then we get these customers that say, oh, I want this in my data center. And I really see this as a potential pattern that you guys could address. But you need people like me to be able to adopt your stuff at the beginning, so that then we can really easily, give a little back there with the Cloud Foundry, embedded in it, and just have my stack inside their data center. And I've seen this now with several SaaS companies, and I see it for us as well.
Hey, Robert, I wonder if you'd be willing to work on a guest blog post on on-premise SaaS powered by Cloud Foundry, if that's a concept you want to flesh out.
No, SAS Institute about this.
Yeah.
And learn more about it, because I'm not familiar.
Yeah, awesome.
Let's talk about that one, Robert. That's really important to us.
Actually, I think the thing Robert would like to learn about is Bosch.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that makes me afraid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's talk about it.
Hey, Kim, you're next.
So, October 16th, Cloud Foundry Seattle. I'll let you know what everyone says.
Awesome.
There's a lot of great questions coming out. People aren't using it right now, so there are going to be a lot of great things. How do we do it? What's the history? How do we implement it in our architecture? Expedia, Nordstrom, a lot of big names up here are coming. So.
Yeah, we had a really good roadshow up there with Andrew. We're deep in this. I've been having a few drinks, so I won't hesitate. Anyone that's watched this long is not going to talk to a lawyer. So I'd say,
No.
folks like Starbucks and T-Mobile and others were very excited.
I'm laughing. Sorry, I'm like watching little Jesse.
All right, John, you're the new guy on the block. Closing thoughts.
No lawyers.
Sorry, me?
Yeah, your first day is tomorrow at Pivotal. We announced it last week. What's on your...
Dude, I am so excited about what happens in the first 30 days. Like, I don't even have a drink because I got to get the kid to bed before I start pouring drinks.
It's so metal. You're going to go out and talk to our 50 biggest clients and prospects and help them design great clouds.
I'm not going to spend a single day in the office in the first month. Like, I'm on the road now starting tomorrow for forever, which is fantastic. It's so good. But yeah, it's the scope of the folks that are using CF. Like, I'm behind the curtain now, so I think that was the surprising thing for me. I was like, oh, this is like, I knew you were closing some deals, and there's been some big names that are public. There are way bigger names behind the curtain. I know. I feel this way when I remember when we knew that the NSA was using OpenStack, and we weren't allowed to tell anyone that the NSA was using OpenStack for like years until they were finally willing to show up on stage. And we're like, we told you, we've been telling you the whole time. This is a big deal, right? And actually, I mean, almost all of the OpenStack customers were that story of like, yeah, we used it for 2-3 years before we finally showed up at the summit and admitted to it. This is the same thing with Cloud Foundry. It's just amazing who's already got it running and who's like, hey, we've been doing this for a while. Let's take the next step. Let's go public in our relationship.
Your friends at Sky, I think, partially spurned by your announcement, said, because they actually had a sad story. They put their public Sky, Sky Networks, one of the biggest companies in Britain, Cloud Foundry user, and their bosses wouldn't let them talk about it. And they had a GitHub page up for one day that was then taken down. And I was bummed. And I think
it was taken down because I started tweeting about it.
Yeah,
So,
and then
felt bad the first time around.
but they said to you today, hey, we're going to be able to contribute back now. We convinced our bosses finally, and I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, yeah, and them even just the scope of what they're doing inside Sky. I mean, it'll be a little more obvious when their code lands again, but it's really impressive.
Yeah, they've said things to me like 30,000 servers full of this, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's good times.
Jesse, parting words from your truck on your 30th. Happy birthday, dude. Happy birthday, man.
Happy
Hey,
birthday.
thank you. I'm excited to be celebrating with you guys. Well, we're now parked. I'm home. The children are sleeping. Sorry, Josh. It's all about operations, right? I think we've got an incredible technology platform, but the operations piece is still a mystery. I think Bosch is an incredible technology, but there are you could probably count the number of people that truly understand the internals of Bosch on one or two hands, or maybe 10 hands. But I think the reality is Pivotal CF as a commercial product can help spread the capability of this platform much farther than it stands today as an open source product. Folks like Dr. Nick and other consultancies like the Ultras guys can help really further the training that's going on, 'cause I think that's ultimately what we need.
Yep.
We're very early days, and I think it's a promising platform, and that operations piece needs to be spread far and loud, and we got to figure that out and use that to get it distributed farther. It's like OpenStack 2 or 3 years ago, like Josh is saying and said in the blog post. So. We couldn't be more excited. We're getting it integrated in our commercial offerings over the next 12 months, and excited to just be part of the community.
Well, thanks for hopping in, man. Like, to be honest, originally I kind of thought we were setting up a private hangout, and I'm so happy that all of my like DevOps Cloud friends just kind of crashed in tonight.
Yeah.
Really fun. So Andrew Schaefer, my total BFF, talk to you every day. Closing wisdom for me and everyone else.
Well, specifically for you, and maybe less so for everyone else, I think that it's early days for all this. There's definitely a transition. You know, the third platform narrative, whatever. I'm sure Rodrigo will make plenty of money off of it. Hopefully, we'll make some as well. But I think it's so early that I don't always like when people declare victory before the real war started. I didn't like that about OpenStack. Still think, I mean, OpenStack's its own issue. I don't want to get into that. I've done that already. So I'll just.
I like that, Ken. I like that. It's a very much declare victory before the war starts. That's excellent.
I still think
my
it's a long game.
That's my MO.
There's a long game, and this is just basically the beginning. And I don't know what things look like 5 years from now, but I think Cloud Foundry will be part of that, and I think that there's a bunch of these other pieces, and they're all trying to be part of it too, and how it all comes together remains to be seen, but let's pick up our shovels and fix bayonets and go do this and not pretend like we already won.
And that's why to me it's really special to work with such a talented team. You know, when I spent Wednesday with Sonny, just chatting with him, incredible experience. Partners like Rodrigo that I go way back with, incredible experience. Josh, goes without saying, incredible experience. Yourself, Andrew. So I think I'm just really excited about the team we're putting together, and I know that the change is real right now. And I think if you look as a VC, you look at, is there a change happening in the industry, and do you have the right team? And to me, we've got real change. We've got a really amazing team, and that's what I think makes it exciting. So I'll stop the broadcast with that, and we can all BS after this, but I'll cut the public off now.
I am excited, just to be fair.
Huh?
Cheers, ladies and gents.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good night, everybody.